So if you watched the how to change the concaves video, or me changing the concaves, I decided while I have the concave out, I'm just going to show you guys a little bit of a demonstration on how a combine works. So to start off, you put the head on for the crop. It's a different head for corn or maize versus your small grains or soybeans. There's the bean head, the one with the reel on the front and the blades, but that is part of the feeding system. As I would say, you can separate the combine into two main systems: feeding, threshing. In fact, you could make it three: feeding, threshing, and separating or cleaning. So very basically, the feeding system is from here front. This is called the feeder house. So your head comes in with your belts or your auger, depending on the head type, runs into these paddles, which is crooked, and that is called your feeder house. So this is spinning this way, and then paddles are going to carry your crop flow right up the front, or up into the front of your rotor. It's called the cone. That pin thing right there is the main rotor bearing. So there's a rotor there spinning. There's like a big, you'll see in a second. Before it gets there, there's a thing called the rock trap. So basically, if you picture the floor drops out, there's like a cup there, and there's a door underneath. The idea is that the loose straw and stuff fits in there, and any rocks you pick up fall on that straw, and the crop flows over top, and you don't send that rock through the whole system, because that can cause some pretty catastrophic problems. Okay, so now that we got to the cab, from the cab back is now the separator system. First part of separating is threshing, meaning you're beating that crop up so the grain falls off of the straw, or the corn falls off of the ear, whatever it is, depending on the crop. Once you get past that cab, you're getting into what's called the cone, or the front end of the rotor. This is the rotor. So this thing actually spins this direction, and if you notice the taper on these pieces, on these rasp bar, that's what it's called, a rasp bar. These rasp bars beat that crop against what's called the concave. So that's that guy right there. And as I've explained, hopefully, see, I can stick my finger through these holes. I cannot hear. This is for small grains. So this is for small grains. This is for large grains. So what we're doing, and you only do the front two. So since this was last used in barley, wheat, rye, actually the last thing that was in here, as you can see, is rye seed. We're changing it out to get ready to start with soybeans and corn, our large grains. So obviously a soybean won't fit through that little crack. So anyway, this guy here, it's variable speed depending on the crop condition. So we set that, and we set this clearance with, there's an arm here. You can't see because it's dirty, but there's a gear, and essentially that lifts or lowers on this. So we can change that clearance of how tight that threshing is between my hand, like where my hand is, between here and that concave. So what now happens, that's threshing. You're gonna have some straw. You're gonna have this kind of thing where, if you look closely, there's no seeds in that. The seeds actually fell out due to the thrashing process. But now what you're gonna wind up with is something like this. If you look careful, there's seed in that, but there's a lot of junk that we don't want. And that's where we get to the actual cleaning. So we're separated. It's broken all that free from that head or that ear. This whole table, the whole way back, is shaking. And as you see, it looks like a mountain that drops off a cliff. And it's shaking, and it throws that up to the next one, up to the next one, up to the next one. While you're in that crop and it is flowing, you're gonna have a mat about this thick, like mulch. And every time that gets to shake, the dense things, if you throw some feathers and some rocks in a jar and shake it up, the rocks are gonna fall to the bottom. And that's how this works. This is a poor analogy, but that's how it works. Your grain is going to hopefully be in the bottom while your straw is on the top, and your lightweight things, by the time you get to what's called the pre-sieve. So let me get my flashlight, show you the pre-sieve. It's essentially the first sieve. Those fingers are adjustable. They aim up or down, and you change that clearance depending on your crop, your seed size. So this whole thing's shaking, and as it gets to the back, you're already beginning that separation process by putting your lightweight things on the top, your grain on the bottom. Hits there, and that's your first chance for that grain to fall through. And then it goes to your upper sieve. There's 3 sieves: pre-sieve, upper, and shoe sieve. And I don't think I can adjust it with the key turned off, so it won't let me adjust. You can see this here, there's a little meter down here, and this is my gauge of how that's set. But as you can see, they're up, but if I angle them down, it closes that gap. So as that comes back, all your straw, your big pieces, are going right out the back into the spinner. Up there, that flat piece, that spins, and that's coming out of the back of the rotor. So your big straw, things that don't fall through the rotor, gets thrown into the back as well. So that's your initial cleaning process up front. Alright, so now when that crop falls through here, your seeds, your smaller pieces of straw that are heavier, things like maybe even like this that are heavy enough to fall through, that don't blow out the back, where do they go? They go from they already passed over top of the pre-sieve, but they went through the upper sieve. That's when you get into what's called the shoe sieve. Now I can't show you very good, but if you look down in there, there's another sieve. And if you look close, that sieve is actually smaller. And it'd be like having a primary and secondary fuel filter. You're catching your first pass, but now you're gonna have some clean stuff, but there's dirt in it still. You still have to filter that stuff out. And what that does, I can't show you very good because I can't just tear the combine apart. Well. But what passes through that, what that rejects, comes out to the back and falls down onto this pan that's tapered, okay? And it falls into an auger right here. So the straw got kicked out the back the first time, but now the second time, what's rejected by that filter, if you will, falls to the back of this tapered thing that's shaking, falls into this auger, which gets carried over to a paddle. This thing's spinning really fast. It blows it up, right? Flings it up into another paddle, which is flinging it over this. Now, pardon how dirty this combine is. Still haven't cleaned it yet. Bear with me. Into that door right there. This right here. So anything that gets rejected the second time is thrown right here, starts the process over. So if some grain actually got through that, it gets a second chance. That is called tailings, meaning it was rejected the second time. So it was accepted by the upper sieve, fell through, and got rejected. Now, something important to notice, while that's shaking, there's what's called the clean grain fan. Another thing I have to say is that while the stuff that falls off the back goes into there, there's another pan in there that flows front, that goes to this auger, which goes to an elevator up to your bin. That is your clean grain. So essentially, if you figure the system's like, here's your system, it's split in half. Anything falls out in the front here goes into your clean grain. Anything gets rejected falls into this pan, which gets spit back into the front. It starts the system over again. Now you're going to have your fan is another important component of this system. So from essentially right where my hand is dividing back, those sieves have a fan underneath, which is actually right here. That fan is creating a positive air pressure that is lifting on that mat. So your straw, if you picture, once again, my analogy of a feather and a rock. If you have a fan and you throw a feather and a rock at that fan, the feather's going to blow, the rock is going to fall. When you have grain and straw, your grain will fall, your straw will be lifted across that shaking surface and be rejected out the back. So because we don't want the straw gets spit out the back onto a pile or spread to dry, while our grain falls through and goes to our clean grain elevator. So the path for that grain very shortly gets thrashed. It gets thrashed. It gets shaken so it falls to the bottom of the pile, falls through one of your sieves into your second sieve, your shoe sieve, and then it falls through there into the clean grain elevator, carried up and augured into your grain bin, your storage bin in the top, while your junk either immediately got passed out the back, maybe it didn't even make it out of the rotor, and if it did make it through that and it fell through your upper sieve, it will get rejected by your shoe sieve, and in that case it goes into the tailings and spit back out again, and it gets that chance. So that's very basically how a combine works. So your clean grain elevator goes up to your bin, and you now have a bin full of grain. That's where this bad guy comes in, this bad boy. So this swings out over your truck or trailer, and that is your unload auger. So inside your bin, your floors slope forward and backward, and there's two augers, that gear and that gear, carry it over into this auger that goes up, and then an auger goes out. And that's how they work. So very basically, that's how a combine works. There's a lot more into what I call combine theory, about, it's like music theory, how to know when to adjust, how to adjust, what to adjust. And I can explain that in another video, but very basically that's how it works. Because for example, critical things are your fan speed. If you go from barley to rye and don't change your fan speed, you can very easily have enough air pressure that you blow rye seed out the back of the combine, and something that's $15 a bushel, you can't afford to do that. So the settings are critical on this machine, but that's very basically how it works. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the other videos, share it with your friends, like the videos, comment with your questions. I love answering questions, and hopefully enjoyed it. God bless you guys. Come back again.